What's up, my good peoples? Welcome to the Be Transformed podcast, where we're talking about ideas that stimulate wholesome thinking unto identity, purpose, vision, and action. I am James Anderson, and with me is Kyle Entenman and Logan Eaton. My good bros, what's cracking?
What's crack-a-lack-a-lin'?
How are you guys doing?
Well, I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
Sensational.
Good. It's good to be back.
It's good to be back.
Good to be back on the show in this beautiful podcast room.
Yeah, thanks for being late today.
Well, you were.
Are you looking in the mirror?
Thank you.
You guys were just really early.
Here we are, cultivating another day.
Boom. Oh my gosh.
Truth and vision.
Frozen
What'd you do
vision?
today, Kyle?
I tried to cultivate some stuff.
Oh.
Yeah,
You tried or you did?
I did. Yeah, I did.
What'd you grow?
Well, some bananas, some peanut butter.
What?
Yeah, it's pretty
Nice.
good.
You grew some peanut butter?
Well, it was
in a jar or out of a jar?
It was the fresh stuff. It didn't have added sugar to it, so I was good with that.
So it wasn't any good.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I tried to cultivate a gnat, but it didn't work too well.
Did you produce any fruit today?
Just bananas.
Well, I think I might have produced some fruit. Yeah,
I believe that.
yeah, maybe by
Sounds
just
confident.
by the people I talk to or something.
Mm.
Always
Sure.
try to produce a little bit of fruit.
What'd you do today, James?
What did I do? Yeah, I did some post-production mayhem. Yeah,
Like on the interweb
on the interwebs. Yeah, the www dots, the
With-
world wides.
with one of those big
You know, those boxes.
numbers and
Interweb
letter
things?
machines.
Yes. What?
What are those big computer type
Yeah, the
things?
typewriter.
Oh, the typewriters.
Yeah.
Man, I heard about those things. Those things are fancy. Excuse me.
Still got one.
Banana.
Post production.
Post-production.
okay,
yeah,
nice.
production after the
Uploads,
fact.
Uploads,
Yes.
edits,
Uploads,
imports.
yes.
Because we had our second
Nice.
podcast last week, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what went up.
Yeah.
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 So you had to like edit my hair and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot,
Yeah.
do a lot of work.
I'm wearing a hat this week.
You look terrible.
Yeah, thanks.
Jeez.
Man, I know, and I'm trying to look well put together, but you know,
Yeah.
It's hard
That's
to
okay.
do.
Logan, what did you do today?
Well, I thank you for asking.
No problem.
I worked.
Okay.
I traveled for work and then worked
Whoa.
at my desk,
Mm.
and then I went to the gym.
Did you take the bike to work or
Yeah, it was
just
a beautiful day. out
drove?
today.
Okay. Nice.
Beautiful day.
In the
Yeah.
rain.
Yeah.
Jamie.
Gusts at about 55 miles an hour. And rain, horizontal
Right,
rain.
didn't even need to pedal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
February 6th today, 2019, huh?
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep. They said it's supposed to go from 55 degrees to like 15 degrees in 4
Really?
seconds tonight.
In 4
Yeah.
seconds.
That's what that's what the meteorologist said.
That's so they're giving a bunch of warnings and stuff like don't be
Okay.
outside when that happens. Don't think that you should be in shorts and then it happens.
Whoa,
and then you
whoa,
get
whoa.
Well, that's not
I'm just saying don't be outside when it
Okay.
happens because
Mm.
you might get surprised.
Yeah.
You might not feel good.
cool. Well, I'll make sure I try to abide by that.
Yeah. Just check the weather.
I will.
Anybody
Yeah.
out there listening on the AM, be aware at about 11 o'clock tonight for a
It's
deep
going to drop
freeze.
down real fast. 40
An
seconds.
extreme deep freeze. If you guys are listening now in the car,
Could be happening.
yeah, watch out.
Right.
Put your panties on. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, so today we're talking about Joseph
Joseph.
and some dreams.
Dreams.
That's in the Old Testament.
That is in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
It's not the book of Joseph, though,
It
for
is-
our listeners, right?
It is not.
Okay, I knew that.
The story of Joseph is in the book of Genesis.
It's in the book of
Mm.
Genesis. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is also in the Bible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right on.
Starting at chapter 37.
37. Genesis.
Yeah. Yeah, so Joseph, it's a pretty interesting story. He has these dreams. Has 2 dreams, and one of them, it's like, I don't know if it's hail or no, I mean hay, but I think it was wheat. There's like 12 things of wheat, and one rises up, and it was Joseph's above his brothers. And he told his brothers, and they were not having it. but they're pretty good at interpreting dreams, though, because they're like, you think you're going to rule over us? And so he was number 11 in the child rank department.
So he had 12.
He was the 11th kid.
Out of 12.
12 siblings
So
or
these
12 kids total.
Yeah, so these 12 kids became the 12 tribes of Israel.
Okay.
So Israel was their father, who was first named Jacob. So anyways, he has this dream. He has another dream where the sun and the moon and 11 stars bow down to him. And so he tells this one to his brothers as well, which his brothers already hated him because of the first dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then his father rebukes him, and he's like, you think your father, you think I and your mother are going to bow down to you? He's like, you crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But it says he kept it in his, he kept it in his mind parts. But yeah, so Joseph, because of these dreams, right, his brothers hated him. But on top of that, his brothers hated him because his dad favored Joseph over everybody else, which is interesting because it's like it's part of the favor of God / bad parenting. So anyway, so the other brothers hated Joseph, and then his dad gave him that fancy multicolored
That
robe.
dream coat thing.
Yeah. And so they hated him all the more. So anyways, Joseph has these dreams, right?
Okay.
And then some time passes. His brothers are out grazing some sheep off in some distant place. And Joseph's father sends him out to his brothers to go find out how they're doing and bring report back. Well, here comes Joseph. And his brothers they're like, there comes that dreamer. You know, he's like, and they're trying to plot to kill him. So, yeah, so they think about killing him. They chuck him in a cistern, a dry cistern. And then, you know, being business guys, they're like, there's no profit in murder. But there would be some profit if we sold him as a slave. So they sell him as a slave, and he ends up in Egypt.
Okay.
And so he gets bought by this guy named Potiphar, works there for a little bit, gets falsely accused of trying to rape Potiphar's wife, gets sent to prison, hangs out for a time, and then ends up standing before Pharaoh and interprets a dream, and that ends up putting him in charge of all Egypt. Okay. So Egypt is the fulfillment of Joseph's dream, which is also the fulfillment of the promise that God promised to Abraham about bringing his descendants into Egypt and then eventually to the promised land. Yeah, so it's interesting when you think about this dream that Joseph had, these dreams. So this dream was to rule over his family. He was going to be in some kind of authority. And what's interesting is that he had the dream, but the fulfillment of the dream was not immediate, right? It wasn't like all of a sudden. And then not only that, but then the situation got crazy, right? He gets sold as a slave, forcefully sold as a slave, ends up in Egypt and gets bought by Potiphar. But what's interesting is that he goes to work for Potiphar. Potiphar, I don't know, gives him some kind of duties to do. But it doesn't take too long for Potiphar to recognize that what Joseph is doing, like everything Joseph's in charge of, is like flourishing.
It's flourishing.
Yeah, it's like increasing. It's like there's something special about what he's doing, and it had to have been more than what everybody else was doing. Because Potiphar was like, if I put him in charge of this little thing and these are the results he's getting, well, what would happen if I put him in charge of my entire estate? So he puts him in charge of his entire estate. Now, what's happening is the favor of God on Joseph is on everything that Joseph touches. So Potiphar's entire estate is increasing, and it's being blessed by God. But what's fascinating is this has nothing to do with Potiphar's righteous or unrighteous relationship with God. This has everything to do with Joseph's being favored by God. So even though Potiphar's reaping the benefits, it's all because of this man, Joseph, which is interesting. So, you guys have any thoughts on that one?
So Joseph's bringing a lot of, he's like the, I think about it, someone hired into a business that like it's a very valued employee. Like, and the employer's just like, wow, this is like awesome. Like, he's doing an amazing job, and it's like a natural, but it's also like a natural thing too, because he's not like trying super hard to. Just he's using his natural gifts and abilities to, and it's bringing, it's flourishing his kingdom, right?
Potiphar's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Potiphar's,
Yeah. So it's going well. He gets put in charge of everything, but Potiphar's wife's got the hots for him, right? So Joseph's handsome man, and so she's like
tie-dye shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like
must have a mustache.
Must.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you shaved yours
Yeah.
off. Yeah. So anyways, she tries to get busy with him. He's like, I ain't having it. But it's pretty epic though, because so he talks about Joseph, his response to her is that he's like, my master's put me in charge of everything. He said he has withheld nothing from me except you because you're his wife. Mm-hmm. He's like, why would I sin against God? Right. So Joseph, in a place of bondage, created freedom. So, right, he says that Potiphar has withheld nothing from him. So the value that Joseph is bringing makes his situation much better, right? Because he's sold. He's a slave. He was once free not too long ago, but now he was purchased by this guy Potiphar.
Okay.
So anyways, but it's interesting because Joseph resolved in himself that he wasn't going to touch this lady. Mm-hmm. And it's just interesting because he would look out for his environment. It said like he tried not to be around when she wasn't there. But because sometimes when you think about like, okay, there's this place of temptation, right? But he resolved in his heart that wasn't even going to be a thing. And that's just proof that you don't have to be overcome, and you don't have to hold thoughts of weakness or of being overcome, but that you overcome these things. So anyways, one day she does catch him inside. Nobody else is there. She grabs him by the cloak, says, hey, come to bed with me. Dude ditches his cloak and runs out the door. And so this is then where she uses the opportunity to get rid of him. So she tells her husband that he tried to rape her and blah, blah. Potiphar, obviously pissed, throws him in jail because Potiphar is the captain of the guard. So I don't know. He must have obviously had some access to this prison. Okay. Well, so he ends up in this prison. And so it's just interesting because everywhere Joseph goes, he gets put in charge. So God had showed kindness, it says, to Joseph and gave him favor with the warden, who then put him in charge of everything, just like at Potiphar's house. Everywhere Joseph goes, he's getting put in charge. It's interesting because so Joseph was number 11 right back at home. And so his brothers were all of his brothers, it sounded like, were out with the sheep, but Joseph was at home. Joseph got sent to his brothers to just find out how they were doing. So it's just interesting, this process of Joseph getting in front of Pharaoh. It's like a place of preparation. Mm-hmm. Because he's learning what it is to be in charge, what it is to manage. Because you think about like Potiphar's place. Obviously, he must have had some money. I'm assuming, had some land, right? So you got fields. So with fields, you got seed. You got to plant it. You got to tend it. Mm-hmm. Then you got to harvest it. You got to process it. You got to maybe sell it and store it, prepare it for the next season, whatever. And there's a lot of people then involved in that. You got animals, people got to take care of those. You got to breed them, this and that. It's like, it would have been demanded of him to increase everything that he had his hands to. So, but you think about all these processes that Joseph had to learn and go through, right? It was like a preparation unto being able to lead a nation, which was the fulfillment of that dream. So then he goes to this prison. He gets put in charge of the prison. So everything, he's responsible for every single person in the prison. I don't know what that even looks like. I don't know how you end up doing something that gets you put in charge in a prison. But anyways, he does, whatever it looks like. But yeah, so here he is managing this massive amounts of people. And then he ends up getting put in charge of an entire nation. But it's like he has these past experiences to pull from.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, how can you guys relate to your past experiences, like benefiting you now and, helping you on your journey to get to where you're going?
You got that one, Logan?
Sure.
Go for it.
Yeah. I do. Well, the first thing that came to mind was what was Joseph's state of mind in all of that? Like, he had to have had a mindset that he couldn't accept just being average or doing an average amount of work or doing, performing at an average level, the work that he was doing. He had to, not to take any glory away from God, but it sounds like he wasn't just like existing and God was doing all this stuff without him. Like he had to be, I guess, open to the knowledge that it would take effort and it would take responsibility, and then he had to have something inside. I think he would have had to have something inside him that wanted to be great, wanted to be successful, that he wanted to perform at the highest level that he could. Maybe just, I don't know, for whatever reason, but probably, to glorify God and all of that. So I guess I was just curious as to, I guess, what you guys thought his state of mind would have had to been and all of that, because it seems like you can't just exist and do all that stuff. You can't just accept average and do all that stuff. You'd have to have some kind of passion or desire to be great or to perform at the highest level that you can perform at, even if it's just for yourself, knowing that you can fill a potential, and if you operate at 50%, it's not good enough for yourself. So operate filling that whole potential, even if it was just that. I guess I was just curious as to what you guys thought, if you think he had a state of mind like that, or if he maybe was just kind of existing and I don't know, wherever, and God was just working around him instead of through him, I guess. Like God, was he open to the fact that he had to take accountability and responsibility and desire greatness and desire a max potential fulfilled, a max performance fulfilled in everything that he did, and God saw that and worked through that. I guess that was my first thought. What you guys thought about the mentality that he had?
What do you think there, Kyle?
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like he had probably a drive within him to begin, and then we talked about God being for him kind of from the beginning and kind of continuing to mold him through that process.
Because he could have just gave up
Sure.
the first time in the well. He could have just said, "This is it. This is ridiculous," and then just gave up. But it's almost like he, like God knew he was a person of wanting to be the best that he could, that wanted to provide greatness or provide a top level of a performance or whatever he did.
And you look at some of his, the actions too of, not sleeping with Potiphar's wife, which, showed his stance with God and that he put God above everything else. So I think he was a godly man, so, dictated how he wanted to.
Like he didn't let his emotions run his existence, because it could have been a really emotional time down in the well, or it could have been a really emotional time in prison, but he obviously had something inside of him that he didn't let his emotions dictate the circumstance. Like his mentality was strong, his mindset was strong. Not to be like, oh, it was all Joseph, not to take any glory away from God, but it was like Joseph had to show up too.
Yeah, because you got two mentalities here, because it would have been easy to just get into the victim mentality and be like, well, crap, right? Like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to cry. This is my situation, and it's hopeless. But it doesn't seem like that was his mentality. It doesn't mean it wasn't hard, because he talks about later, once he's actually in charge in Egypt, he has a wife, has a child, and he was like, God has given me comfort or finally given me comfort, or it's something to that extent. So all that to say is that it wasn't sunshine and rainbows, right? But he took action. He would have had to take action. He says, he's talking about, he's like, no, my master's put me in charge of everything he owns, and he doesn't worry about a thing, right? Because Joseph has responsibility. So it's like you have a choice in how you look at life. You could be a victim, or you could take responsibility. You could make the most out of where you are. But understand, you're not trapped anywhere. I mean, you're not a slave. Mm-hmm. You could be a slave in your mind. But that again, then that's the victim mentality, where things happen to you, right? And you don't have any control, opposed to, a responsibility mentality, which is things happen because of me. Things happen because I do something or because I didn't do something. Mm-hmm. And so, so Joseph absolutely would have embraced the struggle.
Because you can read that story and think, well, why isn't God working with me like that? Like, and you could just be existing and be wondering, like, well, why isn't God doing these great things through me? And it might just be because of an unwillingness to show up, or to take the responsibility, or to start doing something, or make a change in your mindset, or something. I don't know.
Yeah. It's also, I wonder what his mindset when he was in that well was like. I'm sure it wasn't all, thank you, God, like, here I am and I know you're working. I mean, he might have been like, but maybe he realized later, like, it was all a cultivation process for where he was at later on, that he didn't recognize it at the time.
Yeah, well, what's interesting in Hebrews, they're talking about faith, and so they're talking about the ancients were praised for their faith, the fact that they believed, and some of them had promises that they didn't even see fulfilled in their lifetime, but it was accredited to them as righteousness because they believed. And so, you look at a time like this, so Joseph had these dreams, but then his circumstances go seemingly sideways, like fast, as if these dreams don't matter, don't even exist. Like, it doesn't seem like it has any merit at all, right? Like, the situation is just going bad. But that's not what happens. And so I think one thing to take away is that reality of what God has spoken will come to pass. But there's this reality of timing. I don't really like this word timing, because I think on one end, it's like you can't know what's happening, and then on the other end, you think like it's possible to miss it. But I don't. But there was this thing of timing, because he had the dream, and then there was these years, this period of years, because once he got in prison, the baker and the cupbearer get thrown in prison. He interprets their dreams, they come true, and it wasn't until 2 years later that Pharaoh has his dream, and then the cupbearer remembers Joseph. Yeah. So he was in prison for at least 2 years.
And then he was in the well, and then slavery for...
Yeah, I don't think the well was very long.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know how long he was at Potiphar's place.
Yeah, how long he was a slave for. But it sounded like he was a well-respected slave, that, he treated him well, and he was able to continue to reform himself and become work on those characteristics that would make him a good leader, great leader someday.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's this reality, though, that just because you have a dream doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because when you think about, like, if you have this vision and it's of the future, all right, well, let's just say it takes 1,000 steps to get there. Well, step 999 is going to look a lot different than step number 1. And I think that's something to pull away from that is the reality of, okay, we have this dream, but then how do we create it, right? Because there is a process. When you think about, like, having a baby, which, hey, now. Yeah, so let's just say we got a married couple, right? They're like, okay, hey, we want to have a baby, right? They're starting to dream the dreams of having children. All right, well, there's a process to having a child, right? There's a fun process. Step one, right? Where the sperm's got to fertilize the egg. All right, well, then step 2, that egg's got to turn into a full-term baby, right? So you're talking about whatever, a month and then 9 months. So all I'm saying is there's an incubation period in dreams. And then after that, then there's their baby turns into a, I don't know, toddler, and then a little kid and teenager,
bigger, yeah.
adult, right? There's this process, and it's okay that it's a process. Like, it's okay that it's not instant, because the person that you see in the future has certain disciplines. They have certain skills that they've developed. So if you see yourself in the future, I mean, you have to become that person.
Right.
And sometimes the mistake is they're like, well, I'll just become that person once I get there. But the reality is you will never get there if you don't start becoming that person right now.
Gotcha.
Because it's only that person who will create those things.
Cool.
So yeah, so there's just this reality of the process. Because it was the same thing with David. David got anointed king, and then it was years before he became king. And he was in crazy situations and circumstances where Saul was trying to kill him.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's interesting, but he got anointed king, so he had this vision of what his life was going to be. But then at the same time, there was a long period of time where it was looking weird. Like, it was, like maybe it's not going to happen or whatever. Like, it just doesn't look like we're working towards anything, because right now he's running away from the king.
Wow.
But yeah, but at the same time, he's still doing these exploits. He has these men around him, and they go and they raid these different places. He went and lived with the Philistines for a little while, and all these different interesting things. But it's just interesting that there's a process.
Wow.
Yeah. But the other thing that's fascinating is that, so everywhere Joseph went, God went with him. Right, so he goes to Potiphar's house. He's a slave, but he goes to Potiphar's house. But everything he does increases, like it gets better. Everything he touches increases, and because of that, right, he gets put in charge. He goes to the prison, and it's like he makes that place better, right? Or otherwise, why would they put him in charge? And I was just thinking about this reality of everywhere you go, so goes the presence of God, and that should look like something.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it looked like something for sure. Well, I think, you can bring a certain attitude, a certain energy, personality about yourself that emanates your comfortability or your faith that you're here for a reason, and that comfortability that can come with knowing that God's with you, and you can your actions can really speak louder than your words a lot of times, I think. Logan.
Yeah. Are you done?
Yes.
Do you have another chapter?
I wrote that one earlier. Yeah. Yeah.
That was really good. I like
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. Sometimes I create some good stuff up there.
Yeah. A lot of power up there.
Dude, a lot of stuff going on up there sometimes.
So the question was, how what does it look like to bring the glory of God to wherever you go?
Yeah.
I think it's confidence. I think it's a self-confidence in yourself and confidence in God, confidence that you're destined for greatness, confidence that you're destined for winning and success, and it doesn't need to look like what the world thinks that looks like, but that you're confident that you're destined no matter where you go, you can't lose. Confident that you're destined for greatness no matter what, because with that faith, I think comes greatness. Like, greatness is a byproduct of when you decide to put your faith in Christ. I think we can easily develop a loser mentality when really it's when Christ defeated death and defeated the grave and rose 3 days later. I think that calls for a need for a winning mentality, a successful mentality. And so I think just being confident that you're destined for, when you accept that faith and you believe in Christ, you're destined for greatness and success, and being confident of that, so that wherever you go, I mean, it's like I can't lose no matter what. Like, there might be challenges that might get tough, but I'm not literally being confident that I'm not going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that mentality.
I think that just spreads to people.
Yeah.
Because if you come in thinking, well, I hope I don't lose, and you're just iffy, and I don't know, you give off that vibe where it's like it's an instability, and nobody really wants to follow that. So people I don't think people see that. I think people see that, or they sniff that out, and it's like, whoa, that's something's weird with this guy.
Yeah.
Like if an outsider, I guess, would look inside the church, and the church had, a mindset of like, there's nothing good in me, or I'm destined, I just need to be average or be in the background or just to exist and suffer through this life until I die and go to heaven. Then people from the outside are going to look at that and be like, okay, I don't even want to go to church. I don't even want to know.
You guys are worse off than I am. Yeah.
Like I don't want to know the God that you're worshiping if that's what it looks like. So when you come in and you're confident of being destined for greatness and success and winning and like good purpose and fulfillment, I think that's what will draw people in to be like, what's this guy? What program's this guy on?
Yeah.
And then people taste that glory of God and know that it's good, and then they, the faith spreads, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because God's got a function, right? Created things to function, to increase. This was on purpose. So Jesus said it like this. So when you think about like Joseph, and everywhere he went, man, things got better. He changed because he was there. The environment changed. So Jesus said it like this, right? He said, "You're the light of the world." He said, "Let your light so shine before men that they see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven."
Beautiful. Yeah.
No, he said, let them see your good deeds. Like, do these things and let them see it. And because of that, they'll glorify the Father in heaven. So there's this verse in Ezekiel 47. It's a passage. There's also some flaxseed.
Yeah, good cereal. Yeah, well, we don't want to. Yeah, 4.9.
Break out the sponsorship.
Yeah. It's really tasty.
It was good.
It's all
Did
right.
you just slap some yogurt in it?
Is it a milk?
Peanut butter, actually.
Oh, the peanut butter. And the banana?
No, not
No,
the
not
banana.
the banana.
Yeah, sometimes.
It's a grainy cereal,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like bran.
Yeah. Kind of a grainy cereal.
A lot
good,
of fiber in
good
there.
for the digestion. Yeah. Good for that first thing in the morning.
For fast, effective relief.
Yeah. A lot of protein. Yeah.
Good.
Nice.
What's this verse in?
So this
Yeah.
passage in Ezekiel. So Ezekiel's crazy, man. This guy's having, like, he has multiple, like, insane visions. All right,
Visions,
so
okay.
he's having this vision, right? This angel's walking around. They're measuring the temple. Well, they come to the entrance of the temple, and flowing from underneath the threshold is this river. Well, everywhere this river goes, man, it brings life, right? It goes all the way to the sea where there used to be no fish, but it brings healing and an abundance of fish. Everywhere this river goes, it brings life. These trees pop up on either side and they bear fruit in season, and their leaves bring healing to the people, right? So everywhere this river goes, it brings healing and life. All right, so Jesus says in John 7, he says, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink, and I will cause rivers of living waters to flow from him." All right, so rivers of living water to flow from. So and he's talking about the Spirit, which is like the very next verse. He's talking about the Holy Spirit of God coming and living inside of you. All right, he becomes the source of the river is inside of you, and from you it flows out. Right? The source, and there's so much volume that it flows and it has no end. So everywhere you go, you are to be like this river in Ezekiel, which brings healing. Man, it says in Isaiah 61, right? Jesus quoted this one. He's like, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach good news to the poor, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and to release from darkness the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the vengeance of God, and to comfort all who mourn."
Nice.
We are created, we have been set free to live in freedom and then to set other people free. That you shining is to set people free. You using your gifts to establish the kingdom, to teach people who God actually is, like, for real. It's like the one who would bind up the brokenhearted, not smash the brokenhearted, but would bind it up. Like, that is what our life is to look like. And this picture of Joseph is a for reals picture of us in the world, beyond the four walls of this Sunday thing that we do, which is great. Do it. Go there. Serve. Be a part of that. But that is only a piece of the puzzle. It is not the whole picture. You are a light that is to shine in a dark world. You need to go into the darkness to be able to give them light. This is where you were called to shine. And it's this place that you go and you bring healing. Jesus said, dude, it's not the well who need a doctor. It's the sick.
Mm-hmm.
So you go with your gifts, who you're created to be, with the mentality of like, I have something to offer and I'm going to offer it, and I'm going to offer it with everything I have. And you go into these circumstances that freaking suck and you make them glorious.
Beautiful.
That, dude, that's the kingdom life.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this other reality in dreams, right? And even this process of letting your light so shine before men, this developing, defining your gifts, right? Defining vision and purpose inside of identity in God, right? And then getting sold on that and then taking action. And there's this reality, like just like Joseph, where you got to embrace the suck at sometimes, right? So there's this verse in Romans, right, which is just talking about we're justified and free from sin. And he says, in part of it, he's talking about how we glory in our sufferings, because suffering brings about perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope, right? And hope doesn't disappoint. But he was like, we glory in our sufferings. Like there's a certain mentality you have to glory in your sufferings. But it's not suffering for suffering's sake, like as if you are like paying a penalty, right? Because you're justified through faith. And this is what that passage is talking about, right? So you're not paying any penalty. But there's this reality where struggle, resistance, opposition, right? It brings about maturity, right? Like in a sense where like pressure causes weakness to rise up. If you get in a place, into an environment, and it causes you to get stressed out, right? A place of pressure, it's causing weak mentalities to rise up. But this isn't about guilt or shame or condemnation, right? So when you think about like refining a piece of gold in the fire, you're burning off all the impurities, right? So that what is left is the solid substance of total and utter value, right? Like that's this process of the struggle, right? Because he's like, we glory in our sufferings because it makes us develop perseverance, and perseverance makes us develop character, and character, hope. So James said it like this. He said, consider it pure joy, my good peoples, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And when perseverance has had its full work, it'll leave you mature and complete, lacking no good thing. Further on down, he said, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, they'll receive the crown of life God promised to those who love him. Right? So this thing of perseverance, which is interesting, because like perseverance is only like it's in times of struggle. It's in this constant move forward that you would need perseverance. You would need to continue to put one foot in front of the other, right? That's action. This is a life in God. All right, so struggle, whatever, just it causes you to grow. It develops perseverance. Perseverance brings about character. It brings about maturity, and it brings about a life that at the very end you get this crown of life promised by God. It's like if struggle brings about glory, I think we have to change the way we think about struggle. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Logan?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the struggle gets misused. I think the struggle gets twisted sometimes. I don't know. Because I used to hear those verses and think like, well, everyone says marriage is hard. That must be part of the struggle. Or I don't like my job right now, but I feel like if I just struggle through it, maybe I'll be able to bring more glory to God I just struggle in it and talk about how hard it is or how much I don't like it. So I think we allow ourselves to be in things that are, we allow ourselves maybe to look at things in life and call them struggles, when really it's like a struggle is like when you know where you're going and you have a vision. So maybe it's for a marriage, or it's for your whatever you want to do as far as work goes. When you have that vision, it's like the struggle is the challenges and like you said, the opposition that's going to come your way, because obviously the world and Satan wants you to just exist, to just be average. He doesn't want greatness to come out of you. So there's going to be challenges and opposition. And so I think the struggle is when those things come, and then like you said, that reveals weaknesses that you need to address. It reveals mindsets that you need to address so that you can take the next step and keep going. I don't think struggles is like, well, me and my wife aren't getting along right now, and it's just hard right now, or having kids is hard, or this job is hard, or I didn't learn anything on Sunday. I didn't have an emotion at church that sparked some kind of inspiration, and so I think I'm spiritually just depraved, and this life is hard. So I think it's just we get struggle twisted, like you don't glorify in those kinds of things, like when you're just getting I don't know. It's just you glorify in the struggles that reveal something, and the things that come when you're going somewhere, or when you're moving towards something great. When the world and when Satan wants to keep you average and you overcome that, like that's something to glory in when you do that. So rejoicing in those struggles, because you're going to overcome, and it's going to reveal something to get you to the next step. So I think just well, life is hard, or spiritually I'm just depraved, or I'm in a season of winter, and all that stuff is like, well, I don't think that's struggle. Like nobody's telling you to be there. God's not telling you that you have to sit in that or soak in that. It's you have all the power, everything you need to get out of that. So don't call that really don't sit in that and just say, well, life is hard, but if I just exist through it, I'll glorify Christ, because I'm supposed to struggle, I'm supposed to suffer. Yeah. Like taking on a mentality that you're supposed to suffer to glorify Christ. And so these things that are just kind of like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but these things that are just like, that everyone goes through. It's like those aren't really like the struggles that are going to bring glory, that are going to reveal things. Or I don't know, they're the struggles that aren't going to bring glory, because you have all the power to keep moving. I don't know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because because everything you're talking about, that has everything to do with your mentality and your view of God and yourself. And those two things affect your view on the world. And so, yeah, because, people are like, oh, I just woke up, this morning, on the wrong side of the bed. I'm just, I'm being, I'm being attacked. And it's like,
right.
We think God wants us to struggle and suffer.
Or
we get into a mentality that he wants that for us, for something.
Yeah. Or that's the human, we're told, that's what people think, at least. That's a mentality that I see a lot of people like leading with.
Right.
That suffering, suffering for glory or whatever type of thing.
Yeah. Sure.
I mean, I think there is a good aspect, struggles are important, because they, like you said, James, kind of help purify that. Because, we face not every day you wake up and you're like, oh, this is great. I can't wait to go to work and do that. But when you have your mind set on what you want to accomplish, and that, when you can get past the whole, just collecting a paycheck each week mentality, I think that makes your struggles, quote unquote struggles, whatever they are, more worth. And when you identify your gifts, they help you to make them more worth working for, so when you do go through it, you can say, all right, well, I got into an argument with this guy, and I can go home and, ruminate out about it all in my head all day. Or
get
I can
down
say,
on yourself about it.
Yeah. Or I can say, what can I learn from this so that I can, better and attack and grow from this. So, and I think we need to be careful on, struggling versus, suffering. You don't want to put yourself into this suffering mindset where you have to, play the victim role or anything like that. Right. Step out of that, embrace your struggles.
Yeah. Yeah, but don't be crushed by it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because a lot of it has to do with your mentality, like the way you think. And so we're not talking about struggles in the sense that God hates you and you should feel worthless and all that, right? Because that's a direct deception. So if you believe that,
yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
which we all have believed that, that's a you literally are believing a lie, right? And what happens is like that junk stays with you, right? You literally, you give it the nice seat on the couch, right? You take it out to dinner because it's just this junk that you continue to cultivate. You're thinking about these emotions and all this negative thinking, right? Well, the more and more you stay in this habit of thinking and feeling, you create a pattern of life and a habit of this is how I live. This becomes part of your personality. This is who I am, right? I'm just negative. I'm just that.
I'm distant
right?
from God. I'm too far away from God, or I feel far away from God.
God never loves me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Right. So these mentalities are born from deception, though.
Deception, man.
So, right. So when we're talking about these struggles, man, we're not talking about being a freaking victim.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes they talk about being persecuted, right? We're not talking about you like having a bad day, like you're having like these crazy emotions. No, persecution in the sense that you were out talking about Jesus and somebody punched you in the face, right? Like physical abuse, persecution. These sufferings that Paul's talking about, you know, he's going out to proclaim who God is to the Jews and to the Gentiles. And that was getting him beaten on a regular. So, yeah, we're not talking about a victim mentality where it's like, I just suck in this. No, we're like, I feel like you were saying it actually pretty good, where you're talking about, okay, so we have this vision, right? Because Paul's talking about, dude, I labor and strive on purpose, right? So that people will know who God is for reals, right? So we labor and strive, we run uphill on purpose because we're after something. We're intentionally chasing after the will of God. It is God's will that none should perish. Now, this is interesting because there's two different kind of wills in the New Testament. There's the will of God it doesn't matter what you think or what you do, that junk's going to happen, right? That's like the coming of Jesus. That's happening whether you care about it or not. But there's this other will that's more like a wish. It's his desire. And that's this one where he says, I will that none should perish. His desire is that none that perish, but people are perishing. So when you understand what the will of God is and you get into it, this is the stuff. This is the place where it's like, okay, well, I literally have to think differently. I have to become different. I'm, you know, there is this struggle of changing the way you think, of, you know, taking action over being comfortable and all these different thought process and this mentality, but it's like you're going somewhere. You're not sitting in the suck, right? Because I mean, you even talk about like God's far from me, or God this or God that, and that's ignorance. It's ignorant of the truth. Ignorance is a lack of knowledge, right? So we're talking about Joseph, but this is a totally different time period. This is the Old Testament, right? Where we live in Jesus, right? Jesus was the one that says, hey, come drink of me and I'll cause these rivers of living water to flow from you, right? People buy into this mentality where it's like, okay, I gotta get filled up so I can get poured out. It doesn't work like that.
You're already filled up.
If the source of the river is inside of you,
you're already there.
It's coming out of you.
Yeah.
It's sourced from you, coming out. You're not getting filled up and poured out. It's flowing, a constant flowing from you. There's an Old Testament verse in Psalms that says that David in Psalm 23 is talking about, oh, you know, my cup overflows. But look, Jesus came that we would have life and life abundantly. There's this different mentality that you got to take. So we're getting into some Old Testament realities, but there's some New Testament realities that are not debunked. They're not overshadowed by the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. There's realities that we live in that we must understand and never let go of, right? Because you look at Joseph and being a slave, and the story of Joseph is nuts because you could look at it and think, I mean, it's like, all right, well, was this the road that Joseph had to go on to be able to fulfill the dream that God gave him to end up ruling because this was in fulfillment of the promise to Abraham. So it's just interesting because it's like, all right, well then did God cause his brothers to hate him and his father to favor him? And did he end up with Potiphar on purpose? Did he end up in prison on purpose? Right? Like, did God orchestrate it all? Like, I don't freaking know. But because, I look at my own life and I look at the things that I've went through, but those things that have also prepared me or have given me knowledge and insight into that now, like, I teach other people how to get out of, right? When I was in some mental mayhem, and all the stuff we're talking about, like these mindsets of suck and I feel like God's far away from me and I'm no good, or am I even saved? Like that was my life at one time, right? But I have learned how to get out of that. And now on purpose, I help people get free from that, because that's not God's will for you to be jacked up like that. But you start thinking, it's like, all right, well, did God, cause that to happen so that I could have that experience? I don't think so. Because I believed a freaking lie. I believed some deception, and the byproduct of that was mental mayhem, right? So instead of having faith and believing what the Bible said, I went off my emotions, right? Where it's like, oh, it feels like God's far away, God's this, God that, whatever. Well, the truth was when Jesus ascended after dying, being raised, when he ascended higher than the heavens to fill the entire universe with himself, which means you cannot physically get out of the presence of God. Then those who believe, the very Spirit of God comes and lives inside of you. So it doesn't matter what it feels like, because the truth doesn't change. So that's where then you learn to change the way you think based upon the truth, not on how you feel.
Nice. Beautiful. Well said.
But yeah. But there is this reality of struggle and this perseverance, but it's one in which that you're running the race, right? Paul talks about people who run a race. He said, well, run the race in such a way to get the prize. He says everybody who runs goes into strict training, right? Because your mentality is, I want to win. I'm going up against these other people. So I need to go into strict training, right? You need to get into resistance to be able to build endurance so that you can win, so that you can run faster, outlast, these other people, right? Run in such a way to win the prize. He says, when it's all said and done, he's like, I strike and blow my body so that when it's all said and done, I'm not disqualified from the prize. Like I'm not disqualified from the very gospel that I'm out preaching, right? And so we're not talking about, when he's talking about beat and blow his body, he's not talking about like, what's that? There's whipping himself.
Yeah, that's
what's that word? There's a word for it, but
self-mutilation type stuff.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. But like Joseph in Potiphar's house with Potiphar's wife, right? He's like, he stays on top of it because he will not be overcome by something stupid. He's not going to sin against God. He holds the value of his life in God more than, this opportunity to get busy with this wife of somebody else.
Gotcha.
So Paul's talking about like a personal discipline.
Yes.
Like a mental state of mind that he has to continue to cultivate, a discipline that he has to continue to cultivate. And sometimes that takes taking a lie and determining that it's a lie and then moving past it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't feel very good.
Sure.
It feels like maybe a blow to the face.
Yeah.
But it's not, right, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, yeah. But yeah, we're not.
It's
yeah,
maintaining
he's not
a state
actually
of mind.
punching himself in the face.
When he's talking about that striking and blowing his body, he's maintaining a state of mind that takes effort and it takes facing challenges. Then is that?
Yeah, well, I think it's just like he's not letting his body rule what he does, right? Because you think about it, man. This guy went the distance, long journeys. Talking about bandits in the forest, bandits in the desert. He went on these massive journeys. He got beaten, whipped, stoned. Put in front of wild animals to kill him on multiple occasions. But he's just like I'm not going to let my body or my emotions or my thoughts dictate who I'm going to be. Like, I'm going to keep the course. I'm going into strict training. I'm going to be focused, right? When he's talking to Timothy, he's like a soldier doesn't get involved with civilian affairs, right? You stay focused, right? He says you're after pleasing your commanding officer, right? You're focused on your duties and the people around you, and this is what you're doing. You're not looking to the right. You're not looking to the left. You have what you're doing, and you charge forward. So this is about a focus because of freaking vision. There's an understanding of what this life is about, and that is what you're chasing after. Because vision, right? Without vision, man perishes or casts off restraint. Vision is what demands and necessitates discipline, because vision is your destination. Well, if you have no destination, there is no reason to hold a course, because there isn't one, right? There's no reason to have, get disciplined in your thinking or learn this skill or, like persevere through this. There's no reason to have any of those things if there's no end result that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
But when you have that end result, and that is crystal clear, and you constantly review it over and over, and then you make a plan and you take action, then you review your purpose and your vision, your identity, and you take action, review, action, review, rinse and repeat. It's this process that you move forward, and you literally change the way you think, because you become somebody who's so focused on what they're doing that nothing else in life matters. This is how you live a life worthy of the calling you've received. Because if you have no idea what the will of God is, and specifically for your life, then dude, how could you ever know what to do? Mm-hmm. That's how most people live. And then they make and what I don't mean to be crazy, but like a common thing spoken is like, well, God's infinite and I'm finite, and he's a mystery and you can't really know his ways. And
He wants you to know his
that's
ways.
cow patties.
And he wants you to know that.
Yeah.
Because we're here to glorify that.
Yeah, that's that verse. It's to God's glory to keep things hidden, but it's to a king's glory to seek them out.
Yeah. Proverbs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like you said, you got to go seek it out. Like Paul, Paul going back, he did it every day. He kept going. He kept running the race every single day.
Yeah.
Even when he was tired, and it says, lack of sleep and all those things, but he kept on. And not that everyone's life's going to be this, even searching for your vision is going to be like this crazy life like Paul had, but I mean, it's going to have its ups and downs, that's for sure. And it's going to have its things days where you're like, oh man, exhausted, but it's just like going to the gym, not every day you want to go to the gym and work out, but you make it as a discipline for your life. Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miles Monroe's. I just read what he said the other day. He said people make grocery lists about what they want, but they never make a list of what they want for their life.
Yeah.
Like write it out, put it in writing.
Yeah.
That's just because it's just like it's the pattern of the world is just to exist. Like you go to school, then you go to college so that you can get a job.
Check the boxes.
You got to make sure you save for retirement.
Pay off massive
because
debt.
You want to stop working and then die. But you want to stop working before you die. So that's life handed down to you. That's if that's all you do, that's just existing, right? That's not living. So you accept the life that is given to you instead of creating what you see in your mind. But that comes from a different perspective. And this is the kingdom perspective. There is no other perspective. You do not just exist. That is not, I'm not saying that having a job is bad or saving for retirement is bad. But here's what I am saying is you do not retire from your purpose. You can retire from your job, but you do not. Until you are freaking dead, you do not retire from your purpose. When you are alive, there are things for you to do. There are responsibilities and duties. But man, if you don't freaking know what they are because you don't take time to seek it out, man, it's just, you will live a life that is unfulfilled. Like it can be full of stuff and you can have fun and you can do these things, but there's something inside of you
that's like, oh man,
put there by God. That's like, dude, there's something more. And I'm telling you, this is it.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
Daily cultivation.
Yeah. It's that environment. You get in an environment, you seek out knowledge, right? That talks about ideas and thoughts that you've never heard of before. And you start seeing things, and you start seeing yourself in a future that you never dreamed of, because you never had any idea that that was even possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the environment that you keep, right, is what can propel you forward or keep you where you are, or freaking take you backwards, if that's possible. Decompose, right? Where you're dead on the inside waiting for your outside to catch up. But man, not the people of God, man. We're alive on the inside, and therefore we take massive amounts of action on the outside on purpose, because this is the only way that you will bring glory to God. We're meant to make disciples of nations. This is what Be Transformed is after. We are after making disciples of nations, and it is a process. This process that Joseph, that David went, right? They got anointed, or they had the vision, and there was this process that it took to get there. Dude, we are on this process because we will make disciples of nations, because it's about discovering identity, purpose, and vision, and getting into it hardcore, so that you become so good at what you do that the nations call you up and be like, dude, we need what you have. This is freaking for real. Dude, who is it? There's John Maxwell, man. These nations are calling them up because they started some kind of leadership training thing. And these nations call them up and be like, hey, man, we need your leadership training or whatever. Look, this is shining your light so bright before men that they see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. This is how we make disciples of nations. We understand who God actually is, who we actually are, and we freaking get into the life that we were created to get into, which is at the very core of who you are, is everything you actually want.
Amen.
And that is the truth.
Love it. Beautiful.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. My good peoples, that is us. We are Be Transformed. Make sure you check us out at teambetransformed.com for everything you need to live a life that says all day, I keep it cultivated. Until next time.
Yeah.
Peace.